first thing you need to understand is that I didn't believe in anything supernatural before that night. Not ghosts, not demons, not anything that couldn't be explained with logic. But that changed the moment I opened log number 47 and saw my own name written in a report that was supposedly filed 3 years before I even started working there. And by the time the night was over, I realized that whatever was inside that building didn't just know me. It had been waiting for me. I still don't know if I did the right thing. What would you have done if you were me? Tell me in the comments. My name is Ethan Cole, and I used to work the night shift as a security guard at a data storage facility just outside of Chicago, a massive concrete structure surrounded by empty land and rusted fencing. The kind of place where silence feels unnatural, like it's hiding something just beneath the surface. My shift started at 11 p.m., and usually it was boring. Walk the halls, check the cameras, fill out reports, but that night, the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was heavier than usual, like the building itself was holding its breath. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just tired, but then I noticed the cameras. Screen 12 was flickering. Not unusual, but what I saw on it was. It showed hallway C, completely empty, except there was a shadow on the wall, not attached to anything, just a shape stretched unnaturally long, moving slightly even though nothing else was. I leaned closer to the monitor, my stomach tightening. Probably a glitch, I muttered, but even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Because the shadow, it stopped moving, and then it turned, slowly, as if it was looking directly at me through the camera. I stepped back instinctively, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's when the radio crackled. Unit 3, check hallway C. The voice was distorted, barely recognizable. Who is this? I asked immediately, grabbing the radio. No response, just static. My heart was already racing, but I told myself to stay calm. This was my job. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward hallway C. The walk felt longer than usual. The lights above flickered as I passed under them, one by one, like something was reacting to my presence. When I finally reached the hallway, I stopped at the entrance. It was empty, completely. No sado, no movement. Nothing. I let out a slow breath, feeling slightly relieved. See? Nothing, I whispered to myself. But then I heard it, a soft scraping sound, behind me. I turned quickly, shining my flashlight down the corridor I had just come from. Nothing there either. The sound stopped. Silence again. I stayed there for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. Then the radio crackled again. He's not supposed to see it this early. This time, the voice was clearer. And it definitely wasn't anyone I worked with. Who is this? I demanded, my voice sharper now. Still no reply. I decided to head back to the control room. Something wasn't right, and I didn't want to be wandering around alone any longer than necessary. But as I turned to leave, I froze. At the far end of hallway C, something was standing there. Tall, too tall, its head almost touching the ceiling. Its body was thin, unnaturally stretched, like it didn't quite fit in the space it occupied. And its face, I couldn't see its face clearly, but I could feel it watching me. I couldn't move. My legs refused to respond. The thing didn't walk. It didn't run. It just shifted. One moment it was at the end of the hallway, and the next it was closer. Not by walking, just closer. My breath caught in my throat. No, I whispered. The flashlight in my hand flickered. Once. Twice, and then it went out. Complete darkness swallowed the hallway instantly. I heard the scraping again, louder this time, closer. I forced myself to move, turning and running blindly back toward the control room. My footsteps echoed loudly, mixed with something else, another set of movements that didn't match mine. Faster, dragging. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. When I finally reached the control room, I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the door. The scratching started almost immediately. Slow, deliberate, like something testing the surface. I covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. Then the monitors flickered, all of them at once. Every screen went black for a second, and when they came back on, they were all showing me. Different angles, different rooms. But always me, standing in the control room, watching myself. My blood ran cold. That's not possible, I whispered. Then one of the screens changed. It showed the control room, but empty. No me. Just the chair, the desk, the monitors. And then, the doors slowly opened on the screen. Something stepped inside. Tall. Thin. The same thing I saw in the hallway. But in reality, the door in front of me was still closed. Still locked. I couldn't breathe. I turned slowly back to the real door. The scratching had stopped. Silence. And then a knock. 3 slow taps. I nearly collapsed. "Ethan," a voice whispered from the other side. My voice. Perfectly identical. "Open the door." Tears filled my eyes instantly. "No," I whispered, backing away further. "You're not me." The voice chuckled softly, a sound that didn't belong to any human throat. "You already opened it," it said. And then I remembered. When I ran in, I didn't look back. I didn't check if something followed me. The realization hit me like a physical force. I wasn't alone in the room. I turned around slowly, and there it was, standing behind me, taller than before. Its face now visible, or at least trying to be. It looked like my face, stretched and distorted, like it had been copied from memory, but done wrong. Its eyes were too wide. Its smile too deep. "Log number 47, it said softly. Subject finally aware. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything except stare as it leaned closer, its breath cold against my skin. "We've been recording you for a long time, Ethan," it whispered. The monitors behind it flickered again, showing clips, me arriving at work, me sitting, me sleeping, me leaving over and over again. "Every version of you thinks this is the first time." My mind shattered at that moment. Oh God, that's not possible. The thing tilted its head. "You said the same thing last time," it replied. And then everything went black. I woke up in the control room, sitting in my chair. The monitors were normal again. The clock read 11:03 p.m. My shift had just started. My heart was pounding, but everything looked fine. "Just a nightmare," I whispered, trying to calm myself. But then I noticed something on the desk. A file, labeled log number 47. My hands trembled as I opened it. And there it was. My name, my description, and at the bottom, written in fresh ink, "Subject reset successful. Awareness will increase next cycle." I slowly looked up at the camera in the corner of the room, and for a brief second, I swear I saw something move behind it. Watching, waiting, and that's when I realized the night shift never ends. Not for me. The email came in at exactly 2:43 a.m., and I remember the time so clearly because the system clock on my screen had been frozen on 2:42 for nearly 20 minutes before suddenly skipping forward a minute, as if something had forced it to move, and the moment that notification sound echoed through the empty office, I felt a chill crawl up my spine so sharply that I actually turned around, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, even though I was completely alone on the night shift, or at least I thought I was. My name is Marcus Reed, and I worked as an overnight IT technician for a private medical research facility in upstate New York, the kind of place that doesn't advertise what it does and doesn't allow questions from employees who value their jobs, which I did at the time, at least until that night when I realized some things aren't meant to be fixed, especially not at 2:43 in the morning. The email subject line was simple: maintenance request, lower level server room B. But what made my stomach drop wasn't the request itself, it was the sender. It was from me. Same name, same company email, same formatting. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, waiting for my brain to come up with a logical explanation, maybe a system glitch or some kind of test for management. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right because I hadn't sent that email, and yet when I opened it, there was a full report attached, written in my exact tone, describing a persistent noise issue in server room B. Something about movement detected behind rack units, followed by a line that made my hands go cold. Do not enter alone next time. I leaned back slowly, my chair creaking louder than usual, and whispered, "What the hell?" under my breath, trying to calm the sudden tightness in my chest. But before I could process it any further, my desk phone rang. Not the main line, my internal extension. I picked it up after 2 rings, my voice already unsteady. Marcus speaking. Silence. Then breathing. Light. Controlled. Too close to the receiver. You got the email, the voice said. My voice. Perfectly identical. I froze completely, every muscle in my body locking up as my mind tried to reject what I was hearing. Who is this? I asked, but came out weaker than I intended. A soft chuckle followed. You already know, it replied. And then the line went dead. I slammed the receiver down and stood up immediately, pacing a few steps as adrenaline kicked in, telling myself this had to be some kind of sick prank, maybe another employee messing with me, but that didn't explain how they copied my voice so perfectly or how that email existed in the system logs with a timestamp from 3 hours earlier. I checked the logs again. There it was. Sent at 11:12 p.m. before my shift even started. My chest tightened as a thought crossed my mind that I didn't want to entertain. I grabbed my flashlight and hesitated at the door, staring down the hallway that led to the lower levels, where server room B was located. I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct told me to ignore it, to stay in the office and pretend none of this was happening. But something else, something stronger, pushed me forward like I needed to see it for myself, like the answer was waiting down there whether I wanted it or not. The elevator ride to the lower level felt longer than usual, the fluorescent lights inside flickering intermittently, casting brief moments of darkness that made my reflection in the metal walls look distorted, stretched in ways that didn't match my movements. And when the doors finally opened, the hallway beyond was completely silent, unnaturally so, like the sound had been drained out of the air itself. Server room B was at the far end. The door was slightly open. That alone was wrong. Those doors were always locked. I approached slowly, each step echoing louder than it should have. My heartbeat thudding in my ears as I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. The room was dimly lit by the blinking LEDs of the server racks, rows of tall black units stretching into the darkness, their faint humming creating a low, constant vibration that I could feel in my chest. At first, everything looked normal, but then I heard it. A faint scraping sound, coming from behind one of the racks. I swallowed hard and stepped inside, the door creaking softly behind me as it swung further open. Hello, I called out, my voice barely steady. No response, just that sound again. Closer now, slower, like something dragging itself across the floor. I moved carefully between the racks, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness in narrow strips. And as I reached the source of the sound, I stopped dead in my tracks. There was something behind the rack, a shape, low to the ground, moving slightly. I couldn't make out details, but I could feel it watching me, even though I couldn't see its face. This isn't funny, I said, though I wasn't sure who I was saying it to anymore. The shape stopped moving, completely still. Then, slowly it began to rise. My breath caught instantly as it unfolded itself upward, limbs stretching unnaturally long, joints bending in ways that didn't make sense, until it stood taller than the racks themselves, its head tilted at an angle that felt wrong just to look at. And then it stepped into the light. My stomach dropped so violently I thought I might pass out. It was me. Not exactly, but close enough to make my brain reject it outright. Same face, same clothes, same posture, but everything was off. The proportions slightly wrong. The smile too wide, the eyes too deep, like they didn't have anything behind them. You took longer this time, it said softly in my voice. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. That's okay, it continued, tilting its head further, a faint cracking sound coming from its neck. You always come eventually. My legs finally responded, and I stumbled back, nearly dropping my flashlight. What are you? I managed to whisper. It smiled wider. I'm what's left, it said. After you. The lights flickered suddenly, plunging the room into near darkness before stabilizing again. And in that brief moment it moved. Not like a person, not like anything human. 1 second it was across the room, and the next, it was right in front of me. I screamed and fell backward, scrambling on the floor as it leaned down closer, its face inches from mine. Do you remember sending the email? It asked softly. I shook my head frantically. No, I didn't. You will, it interrupted. You always do. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might explode. This isn't real, I muttered, trying to convince myself. This is some kind of hallucination, it laughed. A broken, echoing sound that didn't match its mouth. "You said that last time too," it whispered. And then the servers behind it began to flicker, their lights blinking in rapid, chaotic patterns, and suddenly, every monitor in the room turned on at once. Rows and rows of screens, all displaying the same thing. Me. Different moments, different nights. Walking into this room, seeing it, falling, screaming, over and over again. "You're stuck here," it said quietly. "Every time you try to fix it, you just reset it." I stared at the screens, my mind breaking under the weight of what I was seeing. "No, you whispered. That's not possible." It crouched down slowly, its movements jerky, unnatural. "You sent the email because you wanted help," it said. "But there's no one else here. Just you and me." The realization hit me like a wave of ice. "What happens if I don't come down here?" I asked weakly. It smiled, slowly. "You always do," it said, and then it reached out, placing its hand on my shoulder. The touch was cold, too cold, like something that had never been alive. But this time, it whispered, "We'll try something different." Everything went black instantly. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my office, sitting at my desk. The clock read 2:42 a.m. Frozen. My breathing was heavy, uneven, as I looked around, trying to make sense of what had just happened. "It was a dream," I whispered. But then the clock changed. 2:43 a.m. And my computer chimed. A new email appeared. "Maintenance request. Lower level server room B." My hands trembled as I slowly moved the mouse. And then, without thinking, I clicked open. And somewhere deep in the building, far below where anyone should have been at that hour, something moved again, dragging itself into position, waiting for me to come back. Be honest, what would you have done in this situation? The bus was never supposed to stop at that road. And even now, years later, I still can't explain why I slowed down that night, why I opened the doors or why I let him on, because everything about that moment felt wrong in a way that went beyond instinct, like something inside me was screaming to keep driving, to ignore the empty stretch of road and the lone figure standing under a flickering streetlight where no stop had ever existed. But I didn't listen, and that was the biggest mistake of my life. My name is Ryan Walker, and I used to drive a night route for a long-distance bus service that ran across parts of Arizona and New Mexico. Mostly quiet desert highways where the only company you had was the hum of the engine and the endless dark stretching beyond your headlights. And on most nights, the job was simple. Pick up passengers, drop them off, and keep moving. But that night, at exactly 1:38 a.m., something changed. I remember checking the route display twice just to be sure. There was no scheduled stop anywhere near that location. No station, no marquee, nothing. Just an empty road cutting through miles of desert. And yet there he was, standing perfectly still under a broken streetlight that flickered in uneven intervals, casting brief flashes of light over his figure before plunging him back into darkness. At first, I thought he might be stranded, maybe someone whose car broke down, but as I got closer, I realized something that made my grip tighten on the steering wheel. He wasn't waving. He wasn't signaling. He wasn't even moving. Just standing there, facing the road, facing me. I should have kept driving. Every driver knows that rule. Don't stop outside designated points, especially not at night, especially not in the middle of nowhere. But my foot eased onto the brake anyway, like it wasn't entirely under my control. The bus slowed. The doors hissed open. And for a few seconds, nothing happened. Then he stepped forward. Slow, deliberate. His movements were stiff, unnatural, like he hadn't used his body in a long time. As he climbed the steps, the overhead light inside the bus flickered once. And for just a split second, I saw his face clearly, and I wish I hadn't. It looked normal at first glance. A man in his mid-30s, maybe, pale skin, dark hair. But his expression, it didn't match his eyes. His mouth was slightly curved upward, like he was smiling, but his eyes were completely empty. No focus, no emotion, just nothing. Evening, I said automatically, my voice tighter than usual. He didn't respond, just nodded slightly and walked past me, moving down the aisle toward the back of the bus. I watched him in the mirror as he sat down in the last row, directly in the corner seat, where the light barely reached. Something about the way he sat there, completely still, hands resting on his knees, head slightly tilted, made my skin crawl. I closed the doors and pulled back onto the road, trying to shake off the feeling settling in my chest. Probably just a weird guy, I muttered to myself, but even as I said it, I didn't believe it. The rest of the bus was empty. He was my only passenger. The road stretched endlessly ahead, illuminated only by the headlights cutting through the darkness. And for a while, everything seemed normal again. Too normal. The kind of silence that presses against your ears. After about 10 minutes, I glanced at the rearview mirror. He hadn't moved. Same position, same posture, still staring forward. Not out the window, not at anything, just forward. I looked away quickly, focusing back on the road. Another few minutes passed. Then the lights inside the bus flickered. Once, twice. I frowned and reached up to tap the panel above me. Come on, I muttered. The light stabilized, but something felt different. He was closer. My heart skipped a beat as I checked the mirror again. He was no longer in the last row. Now he was sitting halfway up the bus. I hadn't heard him move. Not a single step. Not a sound. My grip tightened on the wheel. Did you move seats? I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No response. He just sat there, still, watching forward. I swallowed hard and kept driving, telling myself I must have misremembered where he was sitting, that maybe I didn't notice him move, but deep down I knew that wasn't true. Because I'd been watching that mirror constantly. Every few seconds. There was no way he could have moved without me seeing him. The road ahead seemed darker now, the headlights not reaching as far as they should have, like the darkness itself was pushing back. I checked the mirror again. He was closer. Third row from the front now. My breath caught in my throat. Okay, that's not funny, I said, my voice shaking slightly. If you're messing with me, you need to stop. Nothing, not even a blink. And then the bus radio crackled to life. Static filled the cabin, loud and sudden, making me flinch. I reached to turn it off, but before I could, a voice came through. Distorted. Low. He's not supposed to get that close. My blood turned to ice. Who is this? I demanded, my eyes darting between the road and the mirror. No answer. Just static again. I slammed the radio off and looked back. He was gone. Completely gone from the seats. Panic surged instantly as I checked the mirror again and again, scanning every row. Nothing. No. I whispered, my chest tightening as a terrible realization crept in. If he was in the seats, then where was he? A faint sound came from behind me. Breathing. Slow. Close. My entire body locked up. I didn't want to turn around. Every instinct screamed at me not to, but I couldn't stop myself. Slowly, I turned my head. He was standing in the aisle, right behind my seat, leaning slightly forward, his face inches from mine. Up close, it was worse. Much worse. His skin looked too tight, like it didn't quite fit his skull. His eyes were completely black now. No whites, no pupils, just endless darkness. And his smile, it stretched too far, splitting the corners of his mouth unnaturally. You stopped, he whispered, his voice overlapping itself, like multiple voices speaking at once. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. My foot pressed harder on the accelerator without me realizing it, the bus speeding up as the road blurred ahead. You're not supposed to stop. The radio voice returned suddenly, louder now, panicked. He stays at the end if you don't stop. He stays there, the signal cut off abruptly. The thing behind me tilted its head slowly. They always try to warn you, it said softly. But it's too late once I'm on. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I gripped the wheel, my vision blurring with fear. What do you want? I choked out. It leaned closer. I could feel its breath now, cold, damp, wrong. A ride, it said. The lights inside the bus went out completely. Darkness swallowed everything except the faint glow of the dashboard and the road ahead. And in that darkness, I felt something grab my shoulder. Hard. The bus swerved violently as I screamed, struggling to keep control, but the wheel felt heavy, like something else was pulling it. You don't get off? It whispered. Not anymore. The road ahead suddenly changed. The familiar highway was gone, replaced by something else. A long, endless stretch of cracked asphalt surrounded by complete darkness. No stars, no horizon, nothing. Just the road, and shapes, figures standing along the sides. Dozens of them, watching, waiting. My heart dropped into my stomach. "What is this?" I whispered. The thing laughed softly. "This is the route you picked," it said. "The one that never ends." The bus slowed on its own, the engine struggling as if resisting something unseen. The doors hissed open again, and the figures outside began to move. Slowly, toward the bus. "More passengers," it said quietly. I tried to close the doors, slamming the control repeatedly, but nothing happened. They kept coming, one by one, climbing aboard, silent, lifeless, taking seats, filling the bus, and every single one of them turned their heads at the same time to look at me. I screamed and slammed my foot on the brake, the bus jerking violently to a stop, but it didn't matter. Because when I looked up again, I wasn't on the road anymore. I was sitting in the driver's seat. Engine off. Silence. The bus empty. Morning light pouring through the windows. My hands were still on the wheel, frozen in place. For a moment, I thought it was over. That somehow I had escaped. But then I looked in the rearview mirror, and there he was, sitting in the last row again, completely still, waiting. And the route display above the windshield flickered once before changing to a message I had never seen before. "Next stop, you don't get off." And that's when I realized I wasn't driving the bus anymore. I was just another passenger, waiting for someone else to stop. I still think about that night till today. Let me know in the comments if you think I reacted correctly.